Okay, so our slope equation review, first of all, our slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, where m is representing our slope and b is representing our y-intercept. So the one thing that I do want to point out is we won't always have a plus sign here, which in my first example, you'll notice that when I do this, it does end up being a negative. The reason being is because they could write it out, like for example, on the one that I have on the screen here, we've got 7x minus 2. They could write it out as, 7 over 2x minus 2. They could write that out as 7 over 2x plus a negative 2, but having those two symbols right next to each other is really confusing, so they guys leave that plus sign out if our y-intercept is a negative. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and jump right into this. Okay, so as I look through this sample, I'm going to see if I can get this to scroll down a little bit. I'll just move my graph up. As I work through this sample, you'll see that I've got y equals 7 over 2x minus 2. So yesterday we worked on identifying which of those was the y-intercept and which was the slope. So when we solve these, we always have to start with the y-intercept. That is going to give us our first point. So like last week when we worked on graphing slopes, and they would give us a point on the graph, and then we would go through and follow the slope and create the line. Well, now you're having to do the extra step of finding where that point is. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to identify our y-intercept, which is at negative 2. So on our y line, which is right here, we're going to go to negative 2, and we're going to put a dot. So there's my first dot. Now it's just like what we did last week. It's just we have to understand that 7 over 2x is our slope. So I'm going to go ahead and follow this slope of 7 over 2x right here. So I'm going to go, since it's positive, I'm going to go up 7. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and over 2. 1, 2. Here's my new dot. Okay, so there's the 2 points that I'm going to connect to create my line. Okay, so here's the line that I just created. Now, back in section 1, we would go through and we'd pick numbers for x, we would substitute in, we would solve the equation, and then we would do our coordinates. Well, now I'm teaching you a method that you can use without having to do all of those additional steps. And it's basically a 3-step process. Find your y-intercept, follow your slope, and connect your 2 points. Okay, so we're going to do just lots and lots of reps with this. Okay, so here we've got our next one. So I have negative 6x plus 3. So negative 6x plus 3. I'm going to start here. So I need to identify where positive 3 is on my y-intercept. So here's my y line right here, and I'm going to go find positive 3. So here's positive 3 on the y line. So there's my first dot. Now I'm going to go ahead and follow the slope, and the slope was negative 6. So I have to remember that when it's negative 6, it's really negative 6 over 1. So since it's negative, I'm going to go down if my graph is big enough, and I'm still going to go to the right on the run. So I'm going to go down 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and over to the right 1 and put my dot. Okay, so there's my 2 points, and now I'm going to go ahead and connect that. Okay, last week what we did is we were giving 3 examples of points that would fall on that line. Now we can go ahead and get away with doing 2. Sometimes if my 2 points are really close to each other, I might continue that pattern of the slope just to make sure that my line gets nice and perfectly straight. Okay, so let's go ahead and try another one. So here's our next one. I have 6/5 x plus 1. So we start with our plus 1. Okay, so here's our plus 1, and we're going to go to positive 1 on our y line. So here's positive 1, put our dot. And now I'm going to go ahead and follow the slope. So this time I have a positive 6/5. Well, if I go up 6 from my point that I just made, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it's going to put me off the chart, and then I'd have to go over 5. So I could choose to do that. Sometimes I get concerned with doing that because if it's not exactly where it should be, it's going to slightly throw my line off. So I'm going to go ahead and do like we did last week where we work opposites. Okay, so since it was a positive and my graph that I'm currently using is not quite big enough, I'm going to go ahead and instead do down 6 and to the left 5. So if I go down 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 puts me at -5. And now I'm going to go to the left instead of the right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's where my dot would be. Okay. If I had gone up into the right, you'll notice I'm one box past and then to the right 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It should fall somewhere in there. And that looks like it's pretty lined up. The problem is if I don't do a very good job of getting that, it's going to slightly throw my line off. So I'm going to go ahead and do my line between these two that I know for sure are right. And you'll see that when I connect these, see how I was slightly off? I didn't get exactly on that point. It slightly changed my, it slightly changed the slope of my line when I was trying to kind of guesstimate where it would be. So that's why it's important that you understand that you can work backwards if your graph isn't big enough. Okay, so let's go ahead and try some more. Okay, so you guys should have your whiteboards out so that you can work off of graphing these slopes as I'm doing them, because then you're going to do some on your own. So here's our first one. We have y equals 3x minus 7. So we're going to go ahead and start where? With our y-intercept. And remember, it includes the symbol that is in front of that number. So we need to find -7 on our y line. So -7 is right here. Okay, so now our next step is to do the slope, and our slope is 3, which we have to remember that that's really 3 over 1. So we're going to rise 3 because it's positive, and we're going to go to the right 1. So 1, 2, 3 to the right 1. There's my dot. Now this is where I'm saying, see how those are pretty close to each other? If you want to continue that pattern off of that dot that you just made, just so that you can make sure that your line is nice and perfectly straight, you can do that. So I'm going to continue it one more time. I'm going to go up 3 from this dot that I just made. 1, 2, 3 into the right 1. Okay, so now I feel like I can get a better line off of that. Now I'm going to go ahead and connect it. And you guys should be using your straight edges and then put arrows on both ends. Just identifying that that would continue forever. And if I continued the slope, you would see that it would fall back on that line again. Okay? I want you guys to try this one on your own. And then I will go ahead, I'll go ahead and graph it in just a few minutes. So go ahead and pause your video and work out on your wipe-off board doing the y equals -4x minus 2. So go ahead and pause your video, do that, and then start it back up to check yourself. So you should have ended up with a line that looked like that. Notice how it's a negative slope. And if I check the slope, it is 4 over 1. And we started at -2.